Hello! Welcome back to another episode of Away We Go. I'm Kayla.
And I'm Andrew.
And today we are reviewing our complete time in Cyprus.
We spent 2 full weeks in Cyprus. Originally, we were only going to do Larnaca, and because it was Kayla's birthday while we were there, we ended up also going to Ayia Napa. So the trip kind of evolved over time, but I want to start off with our usual, which is the finances. The daily rate ended up actually being a little bit higher than we had expected, but it was about $218 a day. Which is significantly lower than Italy and Greece, but a little bit higher than Croatia. $218, not bad, could have been less. Our accommodations were about $1,200, which again for 14 days is actually pretty good. We were kind of hitting a standard where we were spending close to $100 a day. This one is less than $100 a day. Food also ended up being about $1,300, which is about less than $100 a day. Again, keep in mind this is for 2 people. Groceries, alcohol, going out for food, coffee, whatever it is. And then kind of spattered in there, we did a little bit more shopping than usual. I will mention the shopping was the usuals, some clothes. I bought a new headset for work, but it was also Kayla's tattoo.
Ooh.
So that did cost a little bit higher. I think it was floating in the high 200s.
Yeah, it was about the same as what I paid in Chile.
Yeah. We also did a lot less transportation. We did a couple taxis, buses, but everything was fairly cheap when we had to use them. Our flights in were $339, which is pretty normal. To be honest, especially in Europe. For the activities, we actually spent about $372, which on average is a little bit higher. We typically were spending about $400 for 4 weeks or even 3 weeks. So for only 2 weeks, it's a little bit higher, but it was worth it. It was Kayla's birthday. So we spent about $294 on a sunset kind of boat trip, which was lovely. We got to do a full tour around Ayia Napa and surrounding areas. We spent $46 on another boat cruise, but back in Larnaca. And that was like just 2 hours, a little bit of snorkeling, yada, yada, yada. And then we went to the beach 2 days, which cost. And then we also went to a castle, Larnaca Castle, which was about $8. Again, pricing wise, not bad, especially compared to the rest of Europe that was higher. It could have been lower, but again, I think with Kayla's birthday, things were a little bit higher in some areas. That's that in terms of finances. Kayla, I'll pass it to you for where we stayed.
Okay. We originally decided to just stay in one place. We were just going to stay in Larnaca, and halfway through we decided, you know what, let's go to Ayia Napa for the weekend. So we ended up staying in 2 different places. The first place was the Lemon Tree Hostel, and that was booked through booking.com. It was a property that was managed by Holidayser, and it was overall pretty nice. Yeah. It had a bunch of private rooms. We had a public kitchen as well as an outdoor area, which was really cool. We had a washer and some drying lines. Our room also had a ton of space. It had AC. It had a desk for you to work at.
Storage for clothes.
Yeah.
A lot.
So it was a really good property overall. They were having some issues with electricity early on. It was extremely hot while we were there, and obviously everyone is using the AC as much as possible. So there were some power outages which were fixed by the second half of the week until there was an actual power outage in the entire city of Larnaca.
Yeah.
So that wasn't their fault. That was just coincidence.
Yeah, and it honestly, I will say that place might have been one of my favorite hostels we've stayed in.
I loved the host. I loved the other people that were there. It was just a very communal atmosphere, which is fun. Just
a little bit of a quick story time. When the power went out, my main worry was I didn't have internet to do work. Their main worry is they didn't have AC. Like the host was worried, oh no, all these tourists don't have AC. So they were just giving out beer. But it was kind of nice. It was like a nice, like, nobody was like asking for it. We were kind of like, this is fine. Yeah. We're good.
He even bought us dinner.
Yeah, he was like, hey, just order Uber Eats kind of vibe. And we did, and it was great. So again, great host, great place.
Yeah. The second place that we stayed was in Ayia Napa, and we booked that on hotwire.com. It was the Nelia Beach Resort. This one was interesting. It was definitely an older hotel. It had a bunch of different buildings. It had a pool. My main complaint with it was that the pool hours were ridiculous. The pool opened at 8 a.m., but it closed at 6 p.m.
It was like we had spent all morning doing stuff around town. We wanted to now chill, and they were like, no, this shit's closed.
Yeah. There was a bar restaurant on site. We ended up going to the bar one night. So those are the 2 places we stayed. Overall, decent.
Yeah. All right, so Kayla, let's start off with the usual. What was your favorite drink and or food that you had while in Cyprus?
I think one of my favorite places that we did drink at was the Art Cafe, which when I was looking for an Irish pub, this actually came up. And just by the name of it, you wouldn't think that it would be, but walking into it, you're like, oh no, this feels like an Irish pub.
Yeah.
Basically, there's tons and tons of whiskey, there's tons of beer. I think they had like over 100 different types of bottles of beer.
Yeah.
They had really eclectic walls. They had some classic rock stuff. They had some sports trophies.
It was almost like a mix of like the main level was like an Irish pub, British pub, and then the upstairs was almost like a Cypriot kind of like dining area. So it was like an interesting blend. Good.
What about you?
Ooh, for me it would probably be in terms of food. I think the last place we went to, like as in like the last night, I think it was, we went to a seafood place, which is called Sarolimanu. Probably saying that wrong, but anyway, it's just a seafood restaurant on kind of close to Mackenzie Beach, just a little north of Mackenzie Beach. It felt very much like a classic like family local establishment. Like there was very few tourists. It was mostly families from the island, and it was definitely giving more like family taverna kind of food vibes. Ordered a seafood platter for 2, being like it should be fine, like they'll be whatever. It was massive. They had 2 things of fries. They had like a bunch of 4 or 5 different types of seafood.
We had like croquettes, we had calamari, we had shrimp, we had octopus.
Yeah.
We had
mussels.
Mussels.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it was more than enough food for 2 people.
Yeah. So there was plenty. It was delicious, and I just overall enjoyed it. They were really, really nice. Came with a little dessert afterwards, but just a great vibe.
Andrew, what was your favorite activity?
I will say, I obviously think the best one was the sunset cruise. I think you know when you pay that much, you expect it to be good, and it was really good. We saw some really beautiful stuff. It was a great time. We saw a turtle that was adorable. We got to swim in some of the like really beautiful locations.
Bluest water I've ever seen.
Yeah, we got to see some really cool spots along the coast, which I thought were anyway really interesting. And also it was an open bar, so I think that was kind of nice because as someone who's the financial bearer, there's always that aspect of like how much are we paying for this? So I would say underrated but still good was the Salt Lake.
Oh,
that we went to, which wasn't really an activity, but
it was free.
But it was free, but it was also just kind of like a sight to see. So we had walked to the Salt Lake, which was all salt, no lake at this point because it is prime summertime. But I just thought it was super cool.
They told us we should come back in the winter because the Salt Lake actually has water in it at that point in time, and it's also home to something like 400 species of birds.
Yeah, probably more than that, but the number of flamingos specifically is in the thousands. What about you?
I think you're spot on with the sunset cruise. I thought that was great. It was probably one of my favorite cruises that we've ever been on. It was also the biggest catamaran that we've been on. Something that was really good that is probably kind of discounted sometimes because it's only a 2-hour cruise is the other cruise that we went on from Larnaca. And the reason why I thought this was so good, it was 15 euros each. And that one was a 2-hour cruise. We had 2 swim stops. Nothing was included as far as like alcohol or food. But we did actually swim on top of the wreckage of an old shipping boat that had sunk. So we got to see that, which was really cool. And it's so shallow. And then the second swim stop, we actually were closer to Mackenzie Beach. And if you don't know anything about Cyprus, Mackenzie Beach is actually right beside the airport. So while you're swimming in the water and things like that, the planes are coming in over top of you and you can feel them. Like they are so close to you that like the water goes from perfectly calm to like wavy. So I thought that was really cool. It was a really neat experience and well worth the $20-something if you don't want to do one of the larger cruises.
Kayla, just because we didn't know a lot about Cyprus going into it, and we frankly didn't plan as much as maybe we wanted to, what is something that was the most either unexpected or underrated that ended up actually like surpassing our expectations? What do you got?
Well, I have to say that there was one day when we went out to Ayia Napa and we were just kind of exploring. We actually came across a cultural festival.
Oh my
So we ended up being able to taste some Cypriot foods and drinks. We watched some.
I was gonna say you got a beer, the octopus beer. Yeah, from there.
It's not octopus flavor. It's from a
brewery
called Octo. But had a fig beer, I think it was.
Yeah.
Which was really good. Had some wine. We watched some cultural dances. It was actually just a really cool thing to experience, and it was very unexpected. And that was the Ayia Napa Cultural Festival, and it happens every year on that weekend.
I think this was annual or something like that?
Yeah, something like that.
So super cool.
Yeah. What about you, Andrew?
One thing that I didn't expect, so when we planned Ayia Napa, we had just kind of thought like, okay, cool, it's a little bit, it's the beachy town, maybe more touristy stuff to do. I didn't realize they had like a whole party street, if you would call it that. It was very similar, probably a bit more than like a Koh San Road from Thailand, but it was like, there was just bars on bars on bars. And to a point, like some of them had dancers, some of them had people in the streets to try to like draw you in with like deals. All of them had like random themes. Like some of them were like, the black and white bar, or this
Titanic.
But then they had like the Titanic that was like, it was like fully decked out at the top of like a Titanic boat, and they had like smokestacks, and then inside it's just a bar.
We went to like a Hollywood one.
We went to Hollywood Boulevard, and then we went to one that was just called Bazaar, which was like, I don't really know what the theme was because it was so dark, but yeah, the whole experience was super cool. We went there the first day and we just walked around, and nothing had been open because it was way too early. But then we went back the second day. And we went around like midnight or a little after midnight, and like things were bumping and only picking up till at least, I think we said 3 is when they closed. Well, it's funny, we're in our 30s, so there's a part of us that we were like, this is cool, we should go to bed. But I also can see like if you are a partier, or if you like that social atmosphere, or if you want to drink, definitely like you go there multiple days, go to a different spot, find your favorite spot.
Overall, what were some of your impressions, or what do you have some takeaways?
I would say Cyprus, again, first understand the history of Cyprus. I think that plays a big part in it. We didn't fully understand it until beforehand, but then when we got there, we kind of learned a bit more just about like the north and south and whatnot, because it gets mentioned a little bit here and there. I would also say like, a big one, everyone drives on the opposite side of the road.
Oh yeah, that was a surprise.
Yeah, didn't realize that until it was like, I was like, that's way off. And then the other thing is transportation's not great. They do have a bus system, and the bus system's not bad. It's a little expensive. It's like $240 a person. The buses aren't always super reliable, though there is an app for it. Google Maps does not track their buses, so you have to get their app.
They also don't have Uber. They have 2 different cab calling companies, which is Cabsy or Cabsci.
Yeah.
And Bolt.
I would get Bolt.
Even with Bolt, we had a really hard time trying to get cars.
If you were not in a main area, like we were a little bit off the main road and we were not downtown, like it was impossible to get someone sometimes.
Yeah.
When you wanted to go to the airport and it was €20, no problem then.
Yeah.
But it's definitely not as reliable. So the buses may be your best bet. Again, if you're not comfortable driving on the left-hand side versus the right-hand side, so you don't want to rent a car, you're at the kind of the beck and call of that. So if you're looking to go to Cyprus, it may be best to get a good location, because then you might have more things accessible to you.
Another interesting thing that I learned while we were there is the language that they speak. They actually don't have like a Cypriot language. They do have Cypriot Greek and Cypriot Turkish, depending on what side of the island you're on. And obviously we were on the south, which is Greek. And so basically there's a lot of Greek influence in some of their foods and in their language and in their overall kind of like cultural things. Obviously they have their own culture as well, but there are some things that were very reminiscent of our time in Greece.
Definitely, if you know Greek or a little bit of Greek, it might go a little farther when you're there as well.
Yeah, but they do speak a lot of English. I think there was a lot of expats. It's very easy to get around. It's very easy to communicate with people there.
For sure. So Kayla, let's wrap this up. How would you score it out of 10?
I think Cyprus is one of those places where I don't really need to go back. If I did go back, it would probably be to the other end of the island. We kind of stuck to the east coast and didn't go past the center of the island. So maybe I would visit the west coast. But overall, I had a really good time. I had some good food, had some good people. Like, people were great. I want to say a 7.
I'm going to score it a 6. It pains me to do it a bit because, to your point, I did enjoy a lot of my time in Cyprus, but I look at it from two perspectives. One is, would I go back? And two is, would I recommend it to a friend of mine? And to be frank, I don't, I do look at this also from a financial perspective, which is like, I don't think I found it that much cheaper compared to Greece. Maybe it's not fair to compare it to Greece because of everything, but in reality, when we went to Crete in Greece, it was very similar to me. A lot of aspects were very similar. There are differences, it's not the same, but yeah, to me, I enjoyed my time. If people were like, what are the must-dos in Europe? I don't think Cyprus is like a top one. And I think you'll get a lot of that experience in other places to some extent. So it pains me to say, because I never like to speak ill or down of another country, because there's people who love it and there's people who probably go there, or obviously there's people who live there. But compared to the last 8 countries we've done, it's probably on the lower end. It's definitely on the lower end of my list of the last 8 that we've been to.
Okay.
That was our time in Cyprus. If you are a local Cypriot, first off, I hope I'm pronouncing any of the things I've said correctly, and if not, my apologies. Also, though, let us know if we've missed anything, or if there's something that we are unfairly ruling, or if there's recommendations that you have. Again, we did Larnaca and Ayia Napa. We recognize there's better places, perhaps. There's other places for sure. So yeah, let us know in the comments below. But either way, please do like, subscribe. We have much more content. In fact, we are currently in our next country right now, and we will be coming to you on our next video with our time here in Jordan.